Islam. Islam means peace. It also means I seek, live Allah's movement. Or sincerely love Allah's mathematics. All right. It's your fifth corner, not four corner. Pimp. Pimp means putting in your mind's proper. That's why I use the word pimp as an acronym, because I say I'm putting ignorant minds proper, because pimp is a knowledge. It don't have nothing to do with money. It don't have nothing to do with no prostitutes, unless you on the four corners. And we all know a dog walk on all fours, so that's savagery. You dig? You gotta walk on that fifth. You gotta stand up on that fifth, deal with the mind, which is the five points to the compass, which is 360 degrees degrees of knowledge. But anyway, this YouTube here, I'm gonna talk about the Montgomery Brawl and the symbolism of what it means from a moral perspective. Now, everybody, so-called black, was celebrating the Montgomery Brawl, and the Montgomery Brawl was a fight that went down in Montgomery, Alabama, on the same day that the Confederate States was started, which was the capital of the Confederacy, and it was in Montgomery, Alabama, 1861. All right. The fight took place because you had some so-called white people that didn't want to listen to a so-called black man who was working on the boat called the SS Harriet. All right. They attacked the man. They beat him up. Then the man crew members, once the boat was able to dock, they retaliated, and they charged all the so-called whites with starting the fight. You know what I'm saying? They was given third-degree felonies. You know what I'm saying? What should have been first-degree felonies, but I don't know what they're doing. But anyway, I'm gonna talk about the signs and symbolism of the Montgomery Brawl. All right. First of all, as a Moor, the code of the Moors is astrology, numerology, and geometrics. All right. Astrology means dealing with star logic. It's also dealing with the characteristic of people behavior, and it supersedes belief. Numerology deal with the study of the numbers, because each number give off energies, so you could look at when things happening. And geometrics deal with geographic locations and how it relates to astrology and numerology. But I'm gonna focus on the third thing in this YouTube about the geometrics. All right. Now, in the Montgomery Brawl, the ship that the guy was working on was called the Harriet, and a lot of so-called black were saying that's like Harriet Tubman freeing the slaves. All right. Because the Confederacy capital, like I said, was started in 1861 in Montgomery, Alabama. You can look this up. Now, from a legal point of view, because everything deals with legalese or deal with law, court means money. Either you're going there to get some or you're going there to give some. All right. Now, the story of Harriet Tubman was that Harriet Tubman freed the slaves by taking them from the south to the north. All right. Now, we know, us that deal with legalese and deal with moral science, we know that's a bunch of BS. That's make-believe. And the reason why I say that, how many people are familiar with the Dred Scott versus Stanford Supreme Court decision? All right. Well, anyway, I'm gonna break it down with the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott was a slave, allegedly, in Missouri, a slave state. His so-called master was a so-called white man that was in the military. He took Dred Scott and his wife to Wisconsin, which was a so-called free state. All right. Dred Scott lived there 11 years, him and his wife, as a slave now. Now, this man is living as a slave in a free state. with his so-called master for 11 years, all right? So the so-called master died. The so-called master's husband, wife, took Dred Scott, the so-called slave, and his wife back to Missouri, so-called slave state. So it was some so-called white people came to Dred Scott, the so-called black man, and told him you need to petition the courts for your freedom. Since you lived in the free state for all those years, you should be considered a free man. Now, mind you now, this man didn't care nothing about his freedom. He was happy being a slave now. Till these so-called whites told him, man, since you was in a free state, man, for all those years, you may well be free. When all actuality, all he had to do was just walk away. You know, how I'm going to be acting as a slave in a free state with people look like me that's free, and I'm acting like a fucking slave. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, that's an internal thing. But anyway, the Dred Scott case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And the judge ruled on it. I'm going to put all this stuff in the description of what I'm talking about so y'all can read it for yourself. The judge ruled and said that Dred Scott, you have no rights that we bound to respect. And the reason why the judge did that, because Dred Scott presented himself to the courts as a slave, and he wanted freedom. A slave can't own anything. You know what I'm saying? So Dred Scott was not given his freedom by the court, nor was he recognized as a citizen within the constitutional fold of things. But now I'm going to hip y'all to something that a lot of historians won't talk about, because a lot of your boule so-called black leaders are sellouts. They are with the so-called white supremacy thing because they got a hidden agenda, you know, but y'all don't see the enemy that's hidden amongst you. You know what I'm saying? So the Turners, remember I did a YouTube, you know, all my shit follows up with each other that I do. I did a YouTube talking about the Washita proper, the Turners, the Aboriginal indigenous people, how they took the landmass back. Where the heirs to the Turners before the Empress, Washita First Turner, they already had went to that same United States Supreme Court, except the presidents, for what is what before Dred Scott went there. That's what we Moors do. But a lot of your boule so-called black leaders that's part of these Greek fraternities and part of this other bullshit, they won't let y'all know what the Moors will do. They don't let y'all see our cases, how we bang these people up in the code of law. You know what I'm saying? Using constitutional law. Because we are the true founding fathers of what they call the United States. First 8 presidents were Moors, 35 of the 56 Declaration of Independent people was Moors, and all so-called white Freemasons have to be initiated by a Moor. You know what I'm saying? So, but the live white supremacists is not just perpetrated by neo-Nazis and Klan members. You have so-called black Klan members, which is the boule, which is dark-skinned people that look just like melanin, look like me and you, but they have an agenda to keep you a slave. So that's why you didn't see none of your so-called boule people rushing to defend nobody in Alabama. You know what I'm saying? Because they know that event wasn't sparked by them. That event was an event that kicked off where people with love for each other and their heart took over. But they always try to manipulate the situation, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, but your geographic location don't make you free, you know what I'm saying? What makes you free is your mindset by reading and studying and unlearning the bullshit that they taught you and claiming your true self, you know what I'm saying? Now, there's been recent events going on in retaliation to the Alabama Brawl, what they're calling it. And I'm not going to touch on that in this video. I'm going to do another YouTube that's going to continue with this one. I'm going to talk about the shooting in Jacksonville, Florida. Another event that went on in Pittsburgh, and a couple other things that's going on with the so-called white supremacists and what they up to. But anyway, tune in, stay tuned. You dig? This is your Salt and Fifth Corner Pimp. You dig? It's live.